They sneered as she entered the facility, a seemingly unremarkable woman with eyes that held the weight of untold battle. In Elena's heart, memories of frozen nights in remote outposts where she risked everything to protect her unit still burned with intensity. But at the Whiteman Air Force Base, they saw only a civilian contract, forced to endure a humiliating security inspection in the maintenance. Then she turned around, and the phoenix tattoo blazing across her shoulder blade silenced every voice. What secrets lay hidden behind that symbol? Welcome to Stories of Extraordinary Courage. Let's explore the journey of remarkable individuals who hide their valor in plain sight. Stay with us for unforgettable tales of inspiration. The August heat at Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, shimmered off the tarmac like liquid fire, distorting everything in its path. The scent of jet fuel mixed with the metallic tang of aircraft maintenance, creating that distinctive atmosphere found only where cutting-edge technology meets human determination. The thunder of F-22 Raptors drowned out the distant hum of prairie winds, as if the base existed in its own dimension, separate from the rolling Missouri countryside. Into this scene walked Elena Rodriguez, her steel-toed boots clicking against the polished floor of Hangar Charlie, with the steady rhythm of someone who never wavered under pressure. At 42, with jet-black hair pulled into a practical ponytail and wearing standard-issue coveralls that had seen better days, Elena appeared indistinguishable from the dozens of technicians around her. But her eyes, dark, penetrating, as if they'd witnessed horrors buried beneath Arctic ice, told a different story, one no one in the hangar could imagine. She carried a battered tablet in a reinforced case and a heavy equipment bag, its surface scarred like a veteran of distant conflict. In Elena's heart, old wounds stirred, memories of endless nights under northern lights, where she'd held dying comrades, promising to get them home. Not all promises were kept, but she'd learned to bury that pain, just as she concealed her past beneath the facade of an ordinary contract. Yet every step across the hangar floor, every glance at the sleek aircraft under the fluorescent lights, radiated quiet authority, as if she'd faced challenges far more severe than Missouri's sweltering summer heat. Elena approached the duty station where Staff Sergeant Martinez, hands stained with hydraulic fluid and eyes carrying 15 years of aircraft maintenance experience, sat observing. She signed the log with bold, precise strokes, each signature sharp as a blade, as if she'd written mission reports under enemy fire with shells exploding overhead. Martinez glanced at her tablet, then at her, curiosity flickering in his weathered face. "Checking the avionics suite?" he asked, his voice rough but tinged with skepticism. "Haven't had a contractor for this level of work in months." Elena nodded, her response brief. "Systems don't maintain themselves." Her tone was measured, yet carried an authority that made Martinez look up sharply, as if sensing something indefinable. Perhaps it was her posture, shoulders back, gaze unwavering, like someone who'd given life-or-death orders in situations where hesitation meant catastrophe. Throughout the hangar, the clash of tools merged with radio chatter from the tower, creating the chaotic symphony of military operation. Young airmen in crisp uniforms, their early 20s arrogance on full display, glanced at Elena and dismissed her with shrugs, as if she were just another cog in the base's machinery. They missed the faint scars on her forearms, remnants of battles never recorded in official history. They failed to notice how she observed everything, every person, every tool, with the trained awareness of someone whose survival had once depended on missing nothing. Elena set down her equipment bag, opening it with practiced precision, as if she'd performed this routine countless times in hostile territory. She had nothing to prove to anyone, but in her heart, a quiet flame burned, pride earned through defending principles these young airmen might never fully comprehend. She stepped into her work, prepared for any challenge, whether the hangar's oppressive heat or the scrutinizing eyes waiting for her to fail. But what would make those cocky young airmen finally take notice of Elena? A confrontation was brewing that would shake the entire hangar. Airman First Class Tyler Brooks, barely 22, stood there in a uniform so crisp it could cut glass, his polished insignia gleaming under the harsh lights like badges of untested authority. To him, the hangar wasn't just a workplace. It was his domain where he could flex his newly acquired rank, though he'd barely completed technical training 8 months ago. The past 2 weeks, Tyler had endured harsh criticism from his superiors for maintenance errors, their words cutting deep into his fragile ego. In his mind, those failures weren't his fault. The world simply refused to recognize his potential. Then his eyes fell on Elena Rodriguez, a middle-aged woman in faded coveralls, quietly reviewing her checklist. Her unremarkable appearance made her the perfect target to restore his wounded pride. Tyler approached, maintaining distance, as if getting too close would somehow diminish his authority. "Hey, ma'am," he called out loudly, his voice cutting through the engine noise, deliberately drawing every eye in the hangar. "You're here to access classified systems without proper clearance?" His tone dripped with false concern, as if he'd uncovered a security breach. Elena looked up from her tablet, her gaze calm yet sharp as winter steel, like a blade tempered through years of facing far more dangerous provocation. In that moment, she seemed to see right through Tyler, a wounded young man, ambitious but brittle from recent failure. Yet she showed no reaction, no trace of anger or discomfort. She silently reached into her coverall pocket, producing a folder of documents and handing them over without a word, as if the gesture spoke volume. Tyler took the papers, squinting at them with exaggerated scrutiny, though the seals and signatures were beyond the comprehension of a green airman who'd never left the safety of the continental United States. Behind him, 3 young airmen gathered, drawn by the magnetic pull of unfolding drama. Airman Chen, with his smug grin and hands still soft from desk duty. Senior Airman Walsh, who spent most of his time complaining about duty assignments. And Airman Patel, slightly more experienced, but still caught up in the mob mentality. "New security protocol," Tyler announced, his voice smug as if he'd authored the regulation himself. "No unauthorized electronics near sensitive equipment. We need a complete inspection, including personal effects." His words hit like a stone thrown into calm water, creating ripples of nervous laughter from the young airman. Chen raised his phone, pretending to check messages, but his eyes gleamed with spectator anticipation. The hangar's atmosphere grew suffocating, not just from the August heat, but from escalating tension. The snickers, nudged elbows, and curious stares from every corner pierced Elena's dignity like thorns. Yet she remained motionless, her gaze steady, a mountain enduring the storm. Within her, emotions churned, memories of facing contempt not just from enemies, but from those who should have been allies. She'd learned to channel it, transforming pain into resolve, staying silent when the world expected her to break. Tyler, with his arrogant smirk, believed he controlled the situation, teaching this woman about power dynamics. But he had no idea he just entered a game whose rules he couldn't comprehend. Tyler thought he held all the cards. But what would happen when Elena made her move? A moment was approaching that would change everything. Elena Rodriguez stood surrounded by curious stares and mocking grins, the harsh fluorescent lights above casting judgment like an invisible tribunal. When Airman Tyler Brooks demanded his security inspection, his voice oozed smugness, as if orchestrating a performance he was certain to dominate. Elena set her tablet on the workbench, the metallic click against steel echoing sharply, quiet declaration of resolve. She slowly unzipped her coveralls, each inch of fabric sliding down with the composure of someone who'd endured far worse trials than public humiliation. Within her, a controlled fire burned, not rage, but resilience forged through years of surviving on the razor's edge between life and death. "Damn, she's actually going through with it," Senior Airman Walsh whispered, his eyes wide with fascination as if witnessing a rare spectacle. The coveralls dropped to her waist, revealing a faded black tank top worn from countless field operations. No electronics, no jewelry, just the practicality of someone who lived for mission success, not appearances. Elena stood tall, arms relaxed, her gaze unwavering, as if facing a familiar storm she'd long since mastered. "Satisfied?" she asked, her voice steady without the slightest tremor, as if the question were directed not at Tyler, but at a world that had consistently underestimated. Tyler's smirk widened, his arrogance blinding him to any warning sign. "Turn around, complete inspection," he said, his tone laced with challenge, pushing the boundaries of his cruel entertainment. Then Elena turned around. The hangar lights illuminated her shoulder blade, revealing a tattoo etched deep into her skin. Phoenix rising from flames, wings spread wide, surrounded by coordinates 68 degrees 33 E, and the inscription, Operation Frostfire. None of the young airmen grasped its significance. To them, it was just another piece of military nostalgia from someone clinging to past glory. But in that moment, the hangar door burst open, and Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Hayes strode in, her briefcase hitting the concrete floor with a crash that seemed to stop time itself. "Sweet Jesus," she breathed, her voice trembling, eyes locked on the tattoo across Elena's back. The 2 senior officers flanking her froze, sensing a seismic shift in the atmosphere, though they didn't yet understand why. That tattoo wasn't mere artwork. It was the mark of Arctic Reconnaissance Unit Delta, a black operations team that existed only in the most classified file. The coordinates marked the location of a covert mission in northern Russia in 2018, where a single operative had infiltrated a weapons facility and prevented what intelligence analysts later called the closest we've ever come to accidental nuclear war. Operation Frostfire, a mission so classified that even acknowledging its existence required presidential authorization. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, former intelligence liaison to Arctic Command, had seen sealed reports about that operation, about a woman who'd walked through frozen hell and emerged with intelligence that potentially saved millions of lives. The Phoenix tattoo, reserved for operatives who'd literally risen from the dead, was living proof of her legend. Tyler and his crew, Chen, Walsh, Patel, watched their smirks evaporate like morning frost under summer sun. They realized they'd stumbled into a dangerous secret, one that only someone like Hayes, with decades of experience and access to the highest classified materials, could comprehend. Elena stood motionless, gaze fixed forward, but within her painful memories stirred, endless nights in sub-zero temperatures, wounds that never fully healed, and a vow to herself that humiliation would never break her spirit. The hangar fell silent, except for the distant hum of aircraft engines, like the pulse of a world holding its breath. Elena, seemingly untouched by humiliation, as if immune to curious stares and mocking sneers, pulled up her coveralls with the calm of someone who'd weathered far greater storms. The faded fabric concealed the mysterious tattoo just as she hid her past beneath the mask of an ordinary contractor. Within her, memories flowed like an underground river. Endless nights repairing critical systems under enemy fire, each successful repair a promise to keep her team alive. Yet she let no memory shake her steady hands, no scrutinizing glance slow her determined stride. Elena picked up her tablet and approached the F-22 under maintenance, her eyes scanning the avionics bay with predatory focus, as if tracking hostile targets in enemy territory. She examined each circuit, each connection with stunning precision, as if she could hear the aircraft's electronic heart. Suddenly she paused, her fingers gliding over a fiber-optic cable buried deep in the control assembly. "This cable's degraded," she said, her voice level, eyes fixed on the aircraft as if speaking to it alone. "Signal loss will occur at Mach 1.8. Technical Sergeant Kim Rodriguez, no relation, a grizzled avionics specialist with silver-streaked hair and hands scarred from 2 decades of precision work, stood nearby watching with growing amazement. The maintenance team, equipped with the most advanced diagnostic tools, had missed this flaw, but Elena found it with a single touch. She continued, her fingers detecting minute vibrations in the equipment housing, a skill no manual could teach. Abruptly, she stopped again, her gaze locking onto a tiny actuator. "Calibration is off by 0.3 degrees, she stated matter-of-factly, as if reading a routine status report. Rodriguez stepped closer, squinting to verify. "How did you know?" he asked, curiosity overriding protocol. "I felt it," Elena replied simply, as if it were obvious, like a soldier sensing danger before it materialized. Rodriguez shook his head, not in disbelief, but in awe of a woman who could read complex systems by instinct, as if she'd maintained them in conditions where failure meant death. Every movement Elena made carried the weight of experience from distant battlefields, where a loose connection or misaligned component could doom an entire mission. She made meticulous notes on her tablet, her notations precise as surgical incision. She recommended 4 avionics improvements, small but critical. In Elena's heart, quiet pride burned, not for recognition but for the value of her work. She'd stood on the knife's edge between life and death, maintaining systems under the crushing pressure of time and warfare. The faint scars on her forearms, traces of long nights battling to keep equipment operational, bore witness to that reality. But she needed no one to know. She only needed to complete the mission, as she'd done countless times before, in places where hope barely survived. Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Hayes, her expression granite hard, marched across the concrete floor, her eyes sharp as laser sights, locking onto Airman Chen, who clutched his phone like a security blanket. "Delete that footage immediately," Hayes commanded, her voice low but carrying the weight of absolute authority, "or face a court-martial for unauthorized recording of classified personnel." Chen, his face pale as Arctic snow, frantically swiped across his screen, erasing the video as if diffusing a live explosive. In his mind, the initial thrill of mischief had evaporated, replaced by terror, as he realized he'd just brushed against secrets far beyond a junior airman's clearance level. Airman Tyler Brooks, the instigator of this display of arrogance, now stood motionless in the hangar's shadows, his polished insignia no longer reflecting confidence. In his thoughts, the recent reprimands from his supervisors echoed, but they paled compared to the storm now approaching. Hayes summoned Tyler to her office, demanding the presence of his supervisor, Master Sergeant Davidson. The meeting lasted 30 minutes, but to Tyler, it felt like an eternity. When he emerged, his face was ashen, as if all his ambitions had been crushed under an avalanche. The consequences: 8 weeks of additional duties, from scrubbing aircraft exteriors to inventorying spare parts warehouses. Mandatory sensitivity training on protocols for handling personnel with classified background, where he would relearn the meaning of respect. And a formal reprimand placed in his permanent record, a scar that would shadow his entire career. In Tyler's heart, the once blazing arrogance was now cold ash, replaced by shame and a bitter education. True authority comes not from rank, but from how you treat others. News of the incident spread across Whiteman Air Force Base like prairie wildfire, from late-night maintenance shifts to bustling mess hall conversation. Whispers passed through every squadron, each retelling adding embellishment, but the core remained unchanged. A contractor they'd humiliated had revealed herself as a warrior with a legendary past, and those who'd tormented her had paid dearly. The story became an unspoken warning. Never underestimate anyone. You never know what battles they've fought in shadow. Flight crews began treating each other with newfound caution, wondering if they'd ever unknowingly offended someone like Elena, a silent figure carrying the strength of entire operations within her. In her office, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes pulled out a secure phone, dialing a number that existed in no direct. "This is Hayes, Whiteman AFB. I need background verification on contractor Elena Rodriguez." "Priority Alpha," she said, her voice low but firm. The response was immediate and curt. "She's cleared for unrestricted access. Ask no further question." Hayes hung up, her gaze falling on Elena, who was completing her report outside the hangar. She noticed the marks of a warrior, the tiny scars on her forearms like a map of unnamed conflict, the way she stood always balanced, ready to react, as if danger could materialize without warning. "You shouldn't exist," Hayes said quietly, almost to herself, as if addressing a ghost from classified history. Elena looked up, a slight smile crossing her lips, sharp as winter wind. "Neither should half the systems I keep running, but here we are," she replied, her voice calm, but carrying the weight of someone who'd survived things no official record would ever document. In that moment, Hayes understood that Elena was more than just a contract. She was part of stories told only in shadow, missions that even she, with decades of experience, knew only fragments of. But the lesson Elena left behind had already begun transforming the base, like ripples spreading across still water. Night settled over Whiteman Air Force Base, the soft glow from the NCO club spilling out into the Missouri darkness, mixing with the scent of prairie grass and the distant rumble of late-night training flights. Inside, the comfortable buzz of conversation and the clink of coffee cups against tables created the familiar symphony of service members unwinding after duty. Master Sergeant Davidson, with his graying temples and eyes that held the weight of 25 years of service, entered and spotted Airman Tyler Brooke. Tyler sat alone in a corner booth, staring into an untouched cup of coffee as if searching for redemption in its dark depth. The once blazing arrogance in his heart had cooled to embers, replaced by the gnawing regret of a young man who just learned his first real lesson in humility. Davidson pulled out a chair, sitting across from him, his weathered hands resting on the table like anchors of experience. "Do you understand what you did?" he asked, his voice quiet but free of condemnation, like a mentor guiding a student through darkness. Tyler bowed his head, his hands tightening around the mug, as if trying to contain the shame rising within him. "She's the kind of person this entire base exists to support," Davidson continued, his eyes distant, as if remembering silent heroes he'd once known. "People who do the work that keeps us all safe, even when no one knows their name." Davidson's words fell like stones into the still pond of Tyler's consciousness, creating ripples of questions he'd never considered before. The story of Elena Rodriguez, the woman with the phoenix tattoo and the classified past, had swept through the base like a summer storm. From late-night hangar shifts to crowded mess hall tables, aircrews once quick to judge were beginning to change. They asked questions instead of making assumptions, offered assistance instead of obstacles, as if Elena's brief presence had planted new seeds in the base's culture. Beneath a spectacular sunset that painted the Missouri sky in shades of amber and crimson, Elena left Whiteman, her small but determined figure walking toward the main gate. The evening breeze tugged at her work jacket, momentarily revealing the edge of the phoenix tattoo on her back, a symbol of missions that would never see daylight. In her heart, quiet peace stirred, not from recognition, but from knowing her work had made a difference, even in this small corner of the world. The gate guard, a seasoned sergeant with knowing eyes and a respectful demeanor, nodded with genuine respect as he returned her visitor's pass. No words were exchanged, but that nod carried the weight of silent acknowledgement, like a promise that her story would endure. 4 weeks later, when new contractors arrived, Hangar Charlie operated with a transformed atmosphere. Gone were the scrutinizing stares and whispered taunts. Maintenance crews worked with heightened respect, as if they'd learned that anyone walking through those hangar doors might carry a story deserving of honor. Elena had left an invisible but powerful legacy. Silent excellence demanded reverence, and true heroes needed no medals or recognition to prove their worth. In the hearts of young airmen, from Tyler to Chen, seeds of humility had taken root, reminding them that greatness often hides within the most ordinary-seeming people. Elena's story wasn't just one of personal triumph, but a timeless reminder. Never underestimate someone simply because they choose to serve in silence. Have you ever witnessed someone being underestimated only to prove everyone wrong? Share your story in the comments. Like and subscribe to discover more inspiring tales of hidden courage.